What's up, everybody? This is Cody, aka DFS Prodigy, with Eric, aka Rampage Fan from Chasing Green DFS. So basically, here we are. We're both from Chasing Green. We kind of break down all we can break down basically with NBA, with UFC. Everything's in Chasing Green that you can possibly find. Definitely check that out, which the Discord link will be in the description below. But before we begin, how's it going, man?
All is very well here. I'm very excited for this amazing card on Saturday. How about yourself?
I don't think there's going to be a better card in 2021 at all. Honestly, I think this is going to be the best card that there possibly will be.
It's held together pretty well considering all the fights we've lost recently too.
Oh, most definitely. So we're basically going to start off with the Trevon Jones versus Mario Batista. Give me your thoughts on this first fight.
Yeah, I think this is definitely Mario's fight to lose. I think he's significantly better than Trevon Jones everywhere. I have some concerns about Batista's defense, but I don't think Trevon's power is what people are making it out to be. I thought just like his opponent got caught rushing in his last fight, and that was really what put him out instead of just Jones having this pure KO power. He's more of a grappler. Maybe Jones can land one or two takedowns there and earn 45 seconds, a minute of top time, but even if he gets taken down, I expect Batista to scramble back up. And I think he's a much cleaner, much more dynamic striker. He's actually had a college scholarship for wrestling, but he turned it down to focus on MMA. So I think Batista could get his own takedowns here. And I think he's very alive for a finish. I actually think he's probably one of the safest fighters for a win. And I think he makes a very sneaky play in that 9K range. And I think he makes a great pivot off of Izzy. And I definitely think he's safe for cash games along his GPPs.
Yeah, I think he's way more polished as a fighter than Trevon Jones. I think Jones just has the knockout power, and that's what his deal is. Is just the one punch knockout. Yep. I think Batista's way more polished. The grappling's there, the wrestling's there, and he's fought better fighters. The resume is definitely in his favor, and I like that he has. I mean, the reach isn't that big of a deal. It's a close reach, but I think the grappling of his is definitely going to stand out over Jones, which is why I think on DraftKings, the salary for Batista is a great pivot off, like you said. If you want to get to Batista, I would not blame you whatsoever. I think this is his fight to win, basically. I don't think there's any way around it. I'm not on Jones. I'm much rather go to Batista in this fight, honestly.
Yeah, I think Mario probably makes a second best cash game play in the 9K range besides Nunes.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a high-priced fighter that you can certainly go to. I think, like I said, this is his fight to win. I don't think Jones really is ready for this competition also. I think he needs to step up in this competition more so than Batista does need to, because Batista, like I said, has a better resume, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So moving on to the next fight, and Yurios versus Alon Cruz. Talk to me about this fight, man.
It's a tricky matchup.
Yeah.
Like Medic looks like he has the goods on paper, but on film, he just really hasn't fought great competition. And he was training in Alaska for most of his career. I like that he's moved to King's MMA in California now.
That's a big
step up. Great gym with great bodies he's being able to work with. And I know Benil Dariush has been a mentor to him at that gym, so that's only going to improve his game. But I don't think Alon Cruz is very good at all, but he's a very tricky guy to figure out on the feet. He's going to have about 7 inches of reach advantage in this fight. Good volume. But I think Medic's going to be too much for him. I think there's a good chance he hurts Alon Cruz early on. So I am going to pick Medic to win by KO, but I think Cruz makes a sneaky GPP punt if you're making more than 5 or so lineups.
Yeah, it's the competition for me that Cruz has fought. That's what I don't like. I mean, the competition just isn't there compared to Mediok, where the competition's certainly there. The move, like I said, to Kings, that's a great pickup for him. Yeah. I like his price tag. I mean, I'd much rather get to him than Cruz. Cruz, the striking, that's all he really has for him. Mediok, I mean, he's a good prospect, and the great feet work, basically, I think is in his favor too. I think making his debut in the UFC is definitely certainly there for him, and I'm ready to I'm basically thinking he's going to be a highly touted prospect coming into this game, and being on this card makes him stand out even more, I think, in my opinion, if that makes sense.
Exactly, and if he's as good as people are saying he is, and this is definitely the type of opponent that he should run through.
Oh yeah, 110%. This should be the fight that he basically goes out there and just smashes, in my opinion. Yeah, that's why I'm much rather get to him than Cruz. Moving on to the
I'm probably gonna go ahead.
No, yeah. So like I probably would rather go Batista though, with the high price tag, than Medioc, but that's where
It's definitely the safer play.
Yeah, that's where I'm facing. That's where I'm looking at. Is he's the safer guy, in my opinion.
Yep.
Looking at the female fight in Souza and Lemos, talk to me about that fight.
You actually really like Lemos a lot in this spot. She opened up like a plus 140 dog, and she's all the way to minus 220, 230 favorite now. So a ton of money's coming to her. I think she has Souza covered everywhere, basically. I mean, Souza looked pretty good in Invicta, but she's pretty small for the weight class. She hasn't looked all that great in the UFC. She tends to slow down as the fights get extended. And I think a girl like Lemos, she's a much more polished, cleaner striker. She can get takedowns of her own anytime she wants. She finishes a lot of her fights, so I think that's definitely in play here, and especially that salary 8.7. It's definitely a low-owned play on DraftKings. I'm going to be extremely overweight to the field on. I think she has the potential to break the slate, especially in that range where there's going to be high-owned fighters like Song Yadong and Rakic and Medic, like you mentioned. So I'm going to have lots of lemons here. Maybe I'll have Susan 1 or 2, but I think there's better 7K options than her. So Lemos is a play here for me. And I think she's pretty safe for cash games as well.
So for me, I'm this is her fight to win also. There's no way I don't think Susan wins this fight. I mean, the loss to Van Buren, that definitely stood out to me. Like that loss was awful for Souza. She should not have lost.
It's not like that lost age well either.
Yeah, that's the loss that kind of hurt me and picking Souza. So I'm much rather get to Lemos. I think she's ready for this fight. I mean, Souza's tough, but I think Lemos is better on the feet, which the striking will definitely stand out for Lemos. So this is a step up fight for her. I think she's ready for it. I think this is the fight for her to win and for her to basically make reign in the game of UFC. I think this is her fight to move up, honestly. Like I said, the loss to Van Buren kind of says it all for me for Souza. That's where I'm just kind of crossing her off is that fight.
And she didn't look at all in the third round with Ashley Yoder as well. She looked like crap in that third round versus Yoder.
She looked awful. So
I mean, if she looks like that in the third round versus Lemos, then she's going to get knocked out.
Oh yeah, easily.
I will say I think Lemos is probably the safest cash play in that range.
Yeah.
Probably over Medic, over Rakic.
Yeah.
I think Kara France wins. He just doesn't have very good upside for DraftKings, so he's going to be a fade. So if you're looking for a cash game play in that range, I would definitely go to Lemos, and I think she has very sneaky GP upside.
For sure. Agreed. Going to the Sean Brady and Jake Matthews fight. I like this fight a ton. I mean, this is a great fight in my opinion. Talk to me about this first with the fight for Sean Brady.
Yeah, I'm really high on Sean Brady. I think he has potential top 5 upside if he continues to round out his game. I think he's definitely the better boxer here. Really good output, good durability. I think he's the better. I think the technical wrestling is fairly even, but I think overall grappling, I'll definitely give the edge to Sean Brady here. Just from a DraftKings standpoint, like he's probably safe for 90 points in a win, 85 worst case. It's just on a slate like this, I think it's going to be very hard for him to be optimal. So on any other slate that Sean Brady is on, I usually load up, but on a slate like this at 9,300 where we have, like we talked about, guys like Batista and Medic that are cheaper than him, Adesanya will be Chutaki who's under him. So I'm going to be probably underweight to the field on Brady, even though I like him a lot. I think it makes a parlay piece for bets. And Matthews, I'm not really too high on at all. Fairly tough guy, but maybe I'll have a lineup or two. I'm not going to go out of my way to roster fight in general.
Yeah, so from a betting perspective, I definitely like me some Sean Brady. From a DK perspective, though, it's not really for me, but I do like Sean Brady as a person. Like in the UFC, I think he's a good prospect. I think in his 3 fights, he looked good. Jake Matthews is sort of a guy who doesn't really get the finish in fights. That's the issue for him. He doesn't it's mainly decisions for him. It's not really knockouts or submissions. It's mainly just taking it to the 3rd round and making it who's the better fighter. For Sean Brady, he goes out there and is aggressive. Like he'll go out there for the finish. He's not looking for a decision. He's looking for the finish. So I think Brady's on another level in this fight. I think these are two highly touted prospects. I think that Brady being the older fighter, I like him a ton. I like him in this fight. From, like I said, a betting perspective, I think the aggression is going to be there. I think he easily pays off the betting line for him. I'm all in on Sean Brady in this fight, personally, over Jake Matthews.
I completely agree.
So going to Carlos Oberg versus Kennedy, talk to me about this fight.
I think Kennedy is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Doesn't throw in much volume. Doesn't use his length well. He would be on a losing streak if his last opponent penalized multiple times for groin shots. And especially against Carlos Ulberg, who's a very high level kickboxer. I know his MMA record's only 3-0, but he's had a bunch of kickboxing fights. Very talented guy on the feet, and it's not like Kennedy is much of a takedown threat. And so I think it'll be a fairly low-paced kickboxing match until Ulberg cracks him sometime late first, early second round and gets a knockout. So 9K, I definitely think Ulberg makes a nice DraftKings play. It's just I have some concerns he busts if he doesn't get an early knockout, but I'll probably be playing him in cash games because he's probably one of the safest wins on the card, in my opinion. And Kennedy, I probably won't have any.
Yeah, Kennedy's hard to get to because of that gas tank for me also. The cardio isn't there for him.
Yeah.
He just gasses out. I think Oberg coming from Dana White's Contender Series looked good. I think he can pay off that 9K price tag. This is pretty much just a straightforward fight to me. This is all Carlos for me. I'm not getting too much Kennedy. If one of the fights did get canceled, I would hope it to be this one. Honestly, this is just kind of a fight that I'm just meh on. It's not really a high fight for me. From a DraftKings perspective, I don't mind getting to Carlos, but if you don't get to him, you don't get to him. I mean, so like I said, this is just kind of a meh fight to me. Honestly, I'd much rather go to other fights than this one on the card. So Tim Elliott and Jordan Espinoza talking about this fight. I like this fight a ton, honestly.
God, I hate Tim Elliott so much. I have such a hard time predicting his fights.
Right, that's the problem.
I give a slight lean to Tim Elliott in this spot. I just think he'll probably I expect Espinoza has pretty good takedown defense, so I'll probably be able to stop the first 2 or 3 takedown attempts. But Tim Elliott's not going to give up shooting takedowns, and I think eventually he's going to get Espinoza down. And as we've seen, Espinoza is pretty horrific off his back. And if Tim Elliott's pretty good at anything, he is really good top game, and he's really aggressive with his submissions. So I definitely think Elliott is sneaky, especially at that salary. What is he, 8,200, correct?
Yeah, let me go double check. Looking at Tim Elliott, 8,200. Yeah, and Espinoza, 8,000.
Especially that range where other fighters owned. I think Elliott makes a sneaky play, but as we've seen in multiple previous fights, he can be winning the fight until he either gasses or gets choked out of nowhere or gets rocked. So I probably wouldn't touch him in cash, but he definitely has sneaky GPP upside. In Espinoza, he's at 8,000. I like Benavidez more at 7,900, and both Kenny and Cruz at 81, and then Cruz and Kenny more at 8,100. So I'll have a couple shares, but if you're making under 10 lineups, I don't think you really need to go to your way to target him.
Yeah, for sure. So with Elliott, I like the aggressive side of him. I like that James Krause is in his corner. I think James Krause has made a major difference in the UFC, so all props to him. I kind of have a bias towards those guys with James Krause in the corner because I like those fighters a lot more now based on what he's done with the UFC. So with Tim Elliott, I'm kind of liking that a lot more now with him, which is why I'm kind of having more trust with him than I used to. Like you were saying, he's hard to trust. There's fights he should win, there's fights that he should lose, and it's just been iffy. It's been 50-50 with him every now and then. So, but like I said, I like the aggressive. I like the James Krause is in the corner. I think this is Tim Elliott's fight. I think he should win this based on just the history with him. I like him more than Espinoza personally. Going to Car, France, and Regino, talk to me about this fight. I want to hear your opinion first on this one.
I know there's a lot of people in Bontarine this week, but France is really damn good takedown defense. I think it's close slightly over 90%, somewhere between 85, 95%. And like Bontarine doesn't have the most technical takedowns. He's very strong, and he really uses his strength for vast majority. Sometimes he'll get a nice trip, but if he can't catch Kara-France in a submission early, I think he's pretty screwed in this spot. Like, I'm not high at all France in a prospect, but he's a tough guy to beat on the feet if you're not a variable striker. And Bontarine has some solid boxing, but his cardio is pretty crap for that weight class, especially where a lot of guys, they don't get tired at all. He clearly slows down as the pace goes on. And I just think Kara-France's footwork and movement will be too much. He'll probably win a decision and will score 60, 65 points in DraftKings like he usually does. Bontarine at 7,700 DraftKings, a few shares, but not somebody that I'm going to be heavily targeting. I'm picking on to win, but I'm much rather go to Sterling at 7,800.
Yeah, so the price tag of Kara-France is what scares me because he has no upside. Honestly, he's just going to get you the flat rate of 50 to 60 points. He's a decision sort of guy. He doesn't go for the knockout. I don't like that. I think he wins this fight. Don't get me wrong, but Kara-France is a guy who I hate trying to pick also because of just how he is. I don't know what to think of him. I mean, it's hard to judge him because some fights he wants to go out there and fight. Some fights he just looks like he doesn't even want to be out there. So that's the issue with him. I like Berton's striking. I think he has a good striking aspect, but like you said, the gas tank is in there. I think Kara-France has the more upside in this fight from a betting perspective or from a DraftKings perspective. I'm not touching that. I'm not getting to Kara-France in this fight on the DraftKings side. So that's kind of my view on this one personally.
Yep.
Joseph Benavidez versus Askar Askarov. Talk to me about this fight.
I like Askarov as a prospect. I think he's pretty solid. His style is a tough out for most guys. But I feel like Benavidez is being pretty undervalued coming off of those two brutal losses to Figueiredo, but Askarov is not Figueiredo. Like, he has decent striking, but he doesn't have much power. I know Askarov has solid takedowns, but he can be pretty solid with his top game. When we saw in his last fight, gave up back control to Pantoja when he had a dominant position. That was really strange. And if he does that against Benavidez, I'm pretty confident that Benavidez can get a submission. And if it stays on the feet and Benavidez's chin holds up, I just think his volume and wider range of strikes will be too much for Askarov, and he'll win a decision. But just the main concern is that what's his durability going to be like coming off those two brutal losses and his last two title fights. So 7,900, I think he makes a damn nice play on DraftKings. And Askarov hasn't really scored all that well at all. So maybe I'll have him in one or two lineups in case Benavidez's chin is completely shot and Askarov can get an early KO as a low-owned fighter. But Benavidez is a play here for me. And besides one lineup, I'll probably be full fading Askarov.
Yeah, for sure. So I like Benavidez a ton in this fight. I think that Askarov is going to want to go for the takedown, which he's good at wrestling. Don't get me wrong. He's going to want to go for that takedown because the striking isn't going to be there for him because Benavidez has an amazing chin. So he's going to look to the wrestling. So the wrestling for Askarov, like I said, is good, but Benavidez is a good takedown defense guy. He's gonna defend all those takedowns, and he's gonna regret. And Askarov is going to regret wanting to take this to the ground because I think Benavidez is easily going to out-grapple him and win this fight in a heartbeat if this goes to the ground, in my opinion. That's the Benavidez upside. I think the upside for him is there. I think that this fight is his. There's no way that Askarov, the game plan's laid out for him, but it's not gonna basically be successful because of, like I said, Benavidez wrestling and the grappling and the takedown defense. So I'm all in on Joseph Benavidez in this fight. I'm not getting any shares of Askarov. Give me Benavidez in this fight from a betting perspective and from a DraftKings perspective, personally.
Yeah, I'm gonna be extremely heavily exposed to Benavidez. If his chin's completely shut and he gets KO'd, so be it. But
yeah,
I mean, losing 2 times to Figueiredo, it's not like those are bad losses by any means. I mean, we all know how good he is, and Benavidez looked pretty good in that first fight until he got finished. So I just think it's going to be too much for Askarov at this point. And like you said, give me all the Benavidez, especially at salary at 7,900.
Yeah.
Load up.
So this fight with Kyler Phillips and Song, I want to get your view on this because I'm kind of iffy on this fight. Talk to me about this one.
It's an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
I can definitely see a path to victory for both guys. But people seem to be down on Song Yudong for some reason. Like, the guy's only 23 years old, and he just came off a draw with Cody Stamann and a close win against Marlon Vera, and people seem to be off of him for that reason. It's just weird to me. The guy's 23, and those are two ranked fighters, and they're very talented. So it's not like having close fights with those two guys at a young age is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think Yudong's the sharper boxer and probably has more one-punch power, but we've seen he can be a little bit iffy at times on the feet, and he can give up takedowns, and I'm worried that if Phillips doesn't get knocked out early, Phillips starts landing a couple of takedowns or starts mixing up while landing some kicks on the feet and is able to sneak a close decision away from Yudong. So I don't see Yudong getting a knockout in this fight. So I'm probably going to be underweight on DraftKings. Like, if he wins, I'll probably score 75, 80 with the new scoring. And like, I guess that's fine for cash, but I would much prefer Lemos 100 cheaper. But Phillips at 7,400, even though I'm picking him to lose, I think he makes a great plan, especially because I don't think there's going to be many upsets this week, but he's definitely one of the punts that could come through.
Yeah, for sure. That's what also is Kyler Phillips is kind of a punt that I like. I think the main thing for him is he's come from Tough Enough, if you remember him. He's looked good there. He's a young fighter, but the resume is just kind of iffy compared to Song's resume, who's definitely there. Song has great speed. The power, the striking and his power is there. But the main thing for me is Kyler Phillips' leg kicks. I think the calf kicks, which we saw last UFC card, come through for a lot of guys. The calf kick is what's going to win this fight for Kyler Phillips, which I think if he can get those going, he's going to beat Song. I think, like I said, it's going to be the calf kicks all for me from Kyler Phillips in order to win this fight. And it's a tough fight for me to judge because the styles for both guys is kind of weird, in my opinion, in this fight. So I don't mind getting into Song, but I could see Kyler Phillips coming through as a punt for sure, like you were saying.
Yeah, especially since I don't really think there's going to be many upsets at all. I expect 7,400. Like, even if, let's say he loses a decision, I expect it to be a fairly high volume fight. So let's say Phillip puts up 45 in a loss. Like, that's not going to kill you at his salary, especially if only one other 7K fighter wins. Like, there's a chance that that's still optimal.
For sure. So start talking to me about Dominic Cruz and Casey Kenny. What are your thoughts on this fight?
I've been going back on this fight like crazy, but at the end of the day, I'm going to roll with Casey Kenny in this fight. I mean, I think Dom's definitely the much more talented fighter, much better resume, has beaten the much better fighters, but it's been over 5 years since he's won a fight. And in that time, Casey Kenny is 12-1, and he's just looks better each time out. I've been high on him since he was on the regional scene. I know we had a loss against Marab, but that's nothing to be ashamed about. I think Kenny, if he gets his leg kicks off early, will be able to cruise on the feet to a decision. It's just, I don't think, especially with the new scoring rules on DraftKings, you're probably looking at a 60, 70 point win if that's the case. So I don't really have a ton of interest. And with Cruz, like, I think he's going to have to land at least takedowns to have any chance of winning this fight. So I think he definitely has more upside for DraftKings in this spot. But I'm going to roll with Kenny by decision, and it's not really a fight I'm going out of my way to target, even though it fits nicely. But I guess technically Cruz makes a better DraftKings play because he's going to have to wrestle if he wins.
So the deal with basically the vet versus the young buck, which I'm taking Casey Kenny in. The biggest issue for me with Dominic Cruz is all his injuries, and basically just he's going to look taped up. Like, his whole entire legs is going to be taped up because of how injured he is and how many surgeries he's had. He's slow on the feet. That's what worries me. It's just if he gets one calf kick from Casey Kinney, we could see him just lay to the ground. I mean, I know Dominic Cruz is a hell of a fighter. Don't get me wrong. He's been in the game for a while, but if Casey Kinney starts hitting his legs, that's game over. I think for Dominic Cruz, I think he's gonna fall like a tree, honestly, based on just all the surgeries, all the like injuries he's had on those legs. Yeah, I mean the double knee surgery. If it wasn't a knee surgery, something he had, like the double knee replacement or something like that.
He's had all over his body.
Yeah.
So there's a plantar fasciitis in his feet, which limits his movement nowadays.
Yeah. So for me, it's all Casey Kinney in this fight. I think this is a huge step up in competition for Casey Kinney. I think this is the UFC saying, this is your shot, kid. Basically, go for it if you're the real deal. I think he is. Give me Casey Kinney in this fight over Dominic Cruz, personally, is my opinion.
Yeah.
Another interesting fight in Thiago Santos versus
What's your exposure going to be like on draft?
My exposure? The problem with Casey Kinney is the price tag. I'm not really high on DraftKings with him, but from a betting line, I like Kinney personally. Thiago Santos versus Rockets. Talk to me about this fight, man.
Yeah, I like Thiago Santos as a fighter. He's obviously had a damn nice run since moving up to 205 pounds, but he's 36, 37 years old now. Had double reconstructive knee surgery after the Jones fight, and has a kick-heavy game style. Like that just doesn't go together if you have two-shot knees. And as we saw against Glover, I know Glover has a different style than Rakic, but Santos didn't look like his explosive self in that fight, and I think his days are definitely numbered. That double reconstructive knee surgery, like I said, was against Rakic. I know some people think he's championship level. I'm not fully sold yet, but he has pretty damn good fight IQ, really clean striking, great leg kicks, which might come into play here. Obviously, Santos does as well. I just think we're gonna have a speed advantage. I think he's gonna have a big wrestling advantage. If he probably should go that route, he really has to be careful on the feet, looking out for the big kicks and punches for Santos. 8,600. I think Rakic is gonna get a finish in this fight. Like I said, I think Santos's days are numbered, and I think this is a good spot for Rakic. And I think the UFC is giving him Santos as a showcase fight. After kind of a lackluster performance in his last fight against Anthony Smith. So 8,600, I think he makes a great GPP play. I just think there's better cash plays in that same range. And obviously Santos, pretty much a couple stairs anytime he's on a slate, just in case he can land that KO.
Yeah, so for Santos, it's gonna have to go he's gonna have to go for the grappling aspect of this fight, which is gonna be hard for him based on how he was against Glover. He looked good, but at the same time, he was still kind of slow and still kind of slow to the finish by the grappling. I think this is a great fight for him. I think the reach is there, the striking's there, everything's there for Rakic to win this fight. As long as he keeps Santos from out grappling him, I think this is his fight to win, plain and simple. It's kind of I like basically Rakic in this fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if Santos somehow gets the win, to be honest with you. That's my opinion. So starting with Drew Dober and Makovich, talk to me about this fight.
Do you think it's a must roster in GPP? I think Islam wins his fight 8 times out of 10, but 9,400, as we've seen, his upside's been kept around 105, 104. Besides that first punch KO he had. As we've seen, Dover's obviously made a bunch of improvements, but he really struggles with grapplers, and Makhachev is probably the best grappler in the division now. And I think he's going to have his way with Dober on the 9,400, like I said. It's going to be extremely hard for him to be optimal and a win at that salary, even though I think he's pretty safe for a win. So definitely a fight I'm going to be underweight to the field on. I mean, Dober probably makes the better play just because he's going to add that cheap salary. He's going to have to win by very early KO, and that will be optimal. But Makhachev to win in domination, it's just hard to prioritize him at that salary.
See, in my opinion, they're trying to price him like Khabib. You know what I mean? Because the cousin, obviously, they're trying to price him. He's no Khabib though, but his wrestling's definitely there. The grappling's there. Dober's awful with the takedown defense. That's plain and simple. Dober's gonna lose from the takedown perspective. I think if Dober can somehow outstrike Islam, then he wins this, like you said, 2 out of 10 times compared to Islam, the 8 out of 10. But the thing is, the takedown defense, that's what's worrisome in this fight. I think Islam is going to take him down. It's going to go to the ground. He's going to just outpunch him and outstrike him on the ground. And this is why I'm on Islam from a betting perspective or from a DraftKings perspective. I don't think he goes out there and dominates this fight fully. I think this is more than a 1-round fight. I think this goes to the 2nd or 3rd round, possibly decision. So I'm more so on Islam from a betting perspective. Or from a DraftKings, it's kind of hard to get to, is my opinion. Starting with Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. Talk to me about this fight.
Incredible matchup.
Yeah.
First of all, I think this is definitely a fight you can stack in cash games. I think it's a worst case scenario, only goes 3 rounds, but I have this fight going 05. Maybe it ends somewhere in the early to or mid to late 5th round, but like we talked about before the show, especially as we talked about with the Song Yudong fight, I don't think there's going to be many underdogs winning this card. So Aljamain Sterling at 7,800 in a 5-round fight. If that goes all 5 rounds, I mean, especially with his style, you got to think he's going to be safe for 55 points, worst case scenario, probably closer to 65, 70. So I think he definitely makes a great play at that price range. I'm going to pick Peter Yan to win this fight. I think he might have trouble early on figuring out Sterling's feet. Sterling might be able to get a takedown or 2. I don't think he's going to have any success passing guard or controlling. But I think as the fight goes on and it gets into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, Yan is going to start to pull away, land the much more damaging shots. Maybe he can get a takedown of his own. And I think the output will really start to add up, and Aljo is going to start to wear the damage. But definitely, I mean, arguably the best fight to target on the slate. I think it makes a great stacking cash, but I'm going to have slightly more Yan, I guess, but I'm going to be pretty closely split to my ownership in GPPs just because there is a possibility that Sterling is optimal in the loss.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a straight pick 'em, in my opinion. The styles of both these guys is incredible. I think this is going to be a fight to remember. Yan is skillful everywhere. I mean, the kicks, the strikes, everything is there for him. The chin is amazing, in my opinion. The cardio's there. Everything is there for Peter Yan to basically be a great UFC fighter and a guy to be remembered in the UFC. So all around, he's a polished guy. Sterling, on the other hand, he's going to go for the takedown. He loves those takedowns. That's what makes him optimal in the DK salary range is he's going to go for that takedown. If Peter Yan doesn't prevent it, it's Sterling's fight to win. If Peter Yan can basically avoid the takedowns and outstrike Sterling, then this is his fight to win. So I can see both paths to victory for both these guys. So I think Yan picks apart Sterling on the striking. I think that's where his path to victory is going to be. I think he's going to prevent those takedowns. Give me Peter Yan to outstrike him, plain and simple. And I like Peter Yan in this fight, personally.
I like it.
So talk to me about this fight, Nunes versus Anderson.
I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. I don't really think Anderson has much for Nunes besides some type of meme early KO, whether it be some huge front kick or up kick when she gets taken down. It's just, I think Nunes is much better everywhere. She throws in more output, much better, cleaner striker. I know Anderson is more one shot power. But I really think Nunes is going to exploit the deficiencies in Megan Anderson's grappling in this spot. Anderson's pretty awful on her back when she's matched up with a plus grappler. And Nunes' jiu-jitsu is very high level. I know Nunes didn't look great on the feet in her last fight, but that was Jermaine Durand to me, who's by far the best striker in women's MMA history. So I don't think that's anything to be worried about. And I think Nunes ends this within the first 7-8 minutes. It's just 9,600. It's fine for cash, but she's going to have to score 120, 125 to be optimal in GPPs. Maybe she gets there, but I'm going to take a stand and be underweight. I like fighters that are in the low 9Ks, have just as much upside probably. So by far the safest slate is Nunes. If you want to be super contrarian, throw Anderson in a lineup if you're making a bunch of them. I get it. But yeah, Nunes should crush her.
So I completely agree. I think Nunes is basically the GOAT of women's wrestling, or women's UFC. I mean, she's definitely it. This is her fight to win, plain and simple. I know everybody's on Nunes. I see it, I understand it, but in GPPs, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Anderson. Here's why. The reasoning behind that is Nunes is coming from first the baby. That's another issue. Is her mindset there? And this is Megan Anderson. This is no top women's fighter. This is Megan Anderson just having a huge bump up. So is Nunes basically going to prepare this fight like she normally does? Is my question. Is her mindset there, or is her mindset just thinking I'm going to go in and beat her? This is an easy fight. Her mindset is I'm going to be prepared to fight this fight and actually go in there lights out. That's my biggest question for Nunes. Is how is her mental mind state in this fight against Megan Anderson? Because this is not a fight that she's normally in. This is not a fight. This is not a caliber of a fighter she normally fights. Same thing for Anderson though. So I would not blame you at all in GPPs to go take a shot on Anderson or throw a straight bet on her to basically just hope for the best and hope that Nunes is on the top of her game. Is my opinion. I think Nunes wins this fight, yes, but I would not blame you one bit to go throw this in a GPP option and throw a bet on Anderson and think maybe she outclasses her. Maybe she comes in there more mentally ready, more ready to go in this fight. You know what I mean? So that's what I look at. That's from my viewpoint on this fight. I think Nunes wins, but I could see where Anderson somehow, some way, getting this fight to her advantage. Is my opinion. So, starting with the Polish Power versus Izzy, how do you feel about this main event?
Yeah, definitely a close fight. I'm going to roll with Izzy here. I think I think the speed advantage is going to be borderline ridiculous. Obviously, Jan's power advantage will be just as ridiculous, but as we know, speed kills, especially when you're as clean, as polished as a striker as Izzy is. I just think he's going to be able to piece Jan apart as the fight goes on. I don't expect it to be very exciting unless Jan gets early KO. I think he'll probably look something like a mix between Izzy versus Romero and Izzy versus Paulo Costa, something like that. Maybe Jan, with his big strength and weight advantage, he'll be able to land a couple takedowns. And Blachowicz has pretty underrated jiu-jitsu. So I wouldn't be totally shocked if he had a grappling path to victory. It's just, I understand his takedown defense is pretty great. But like we said, Blachowicz doesn't have a big strength advantage. Is he moving up in weight? So I know it's a very attractive fight just because of the big names, but I actually think you can get away with fading it if you're making a limited amount of lineups. Izzy, if it goes to a decision, best case scenario, he scores is 85, 90. I guess that's fine for cash games, but definitely not going to be optimal in GPPs. And for Izzy to be optimal, he probably needs to get a first round KO, which I don't really see happening. So I'm going to be significantly underweight to Israel, even though I'm picking him to win by decision. And with Blachowicz, I'm definitely going to have a few shares. Like we talked about with Sterling, I don't see many underdogs winning. And with those two guys in 5-round fights, they'll be sure to rack up some points. If you want to roster Blachowicz in cash, 7K, I think that's fine. I mean, worst case scenario, he gets 25, 35 points. And if a 6.9K, 7K fighter gets me that in cash games, I'll take it. So I guess Jan's the preferred play if you're going to roster this in GPPs. But I definitely prefer rostering the Peter Yan Sterling fight compared to this fight.
So for me, basically Izzy's fight to win. I think Izzy's going to dance around him. I think the speed, like you said, speed kills in this fight. He's quick on the feet. He's quick with the striking. The striking's accurate by far. I think he's going to dance around Jane. I don't think Jane's basically a Cinderella story in the making for UFC, as my opinion. He's gonna need to hit him basically with that one knockout punch to win this fight. Similar to kind of like the Derek Lewis situation for me. That's kind of how I'm viewing this. Is he needs to basically go out there, outstrike him, somehow land a few punches here and there, and let's go for the kill shot in order to win this fight. I think he can get it done at his price tag on DraftKings. I think he certainly can. If you want to go for him in DraftKings, I would not blame you one at all. So my deal is I think Izzy's going to win this fight, but I would not be surprised one single bit if Jane gets that one hit and knocks him out and knocks him flat on his feet and he wins this fight. So it's a great main event from a style. I love this card a ton. I think this is his fight to win, as Izzy's. So, but overall, this card is definitely stacked in my opinion. I like this card a ton.
Oh, for sure. But definitely the best card in the last year or so.
Do you have any last closing thoughts, man, before we head out of here?
Probably just quickly go over, since it's such a big slate with 15 fights, we can probably try to cross some fights out that we don't think aren't going to score too well. So like if you're making 10 or less lineups, you can probably fade the Sean Brady versus Jake Matthews. You can probably fade the Cara France versus Bontarine fight. Yeah. You can probably have a couple of shares to the main event, but you don't really need to be overly exposed. And what else can you get away with fading here? I guess the Oberg versus Nchuku fight, you can fade that in GPPs. I think Oberg makes a pretty damn safe cash play. And so I think, especially in big slates like this, it's important to narrow down your player pools so you don't have overly exposed anybody. And I know last week the scoring was very low. I think 531 GPPs. I think this week you're going to need probably 500 to even cash. So just be aware of that with the 3 title fights, with 15 fights on the card. It's probably going to be a very high scoring slate. So I know it's tempting to go heavy when we see big slates like this, but I'll probably be playing my normal amount or be going slightly lighter just because I have so much invested in bets as well.
Exactly, man. So this pretty much wraps up this card for us. It's a great card. I would definitely be tuning in. This is definitely a pay-per-view that is worth buying, in my opinion. So definitely tune into this fight card. And that pretty much wraps it up for us. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have a great and safe rest of your night. Have a good one, everybody.